Awede, welcome to Born Extinct, my journey into my acknowledgement of my ancestors and authentic spiritual self. My name is Khoi, and I was born extinct. From dirt poor illiterates, homeless convicts, shell-shocked nutters, serfs, peasants, rejected misfits, to rich rulers overnight. In the 15 and 1600s, almost 90% of Europeans lived on farms or small rural communities. Europeans inherited the social orders, a system of classification from their medieval ancestors. A feudal pyramid existed in Europe with the crown and the church owning all the land. Europe employed a strict hierarchy, ensuring that those at the bottom had no upward mobility. The lords of the peasants worked for the crown and headed convents, commanded fortresses, noble militias, collected rents from the land, mills, timberland, rivers, crops, hunting grounds, and armies. The benefits for nobility varied by country and era and included the right to wear a sword, crested coat of arms, and sit in special pews in churches. The strong appeal of noble status and values was behind much of the dreams of the poor and marginalized. Nobility was on top of the pyramid, followed by gentry, who were not well off, but they were better than the poor. The aristocrat won privilege on the expense of others and developed a set of manners and lifestyles to match it. Court life became a model of good behavior, and the word courteous made an appearance. These included religious dissidents, peasants, at a time when only land ownership meant freedom. After the Middle Ages, there was a definitive structure in society. You were born in the class in which you will be for the rest of your life, working long hours on small-scale agricultural farms, leasing land, paying taxes. Subservience to the dominant class made many eager to flee for better pastures. Warfare, disease, famine was experienced by every European from 1453 to 1789. By the 1800s, more than 65 million Europeans have fled their continent. Food security was a major concern in Europe, and disease was a major cause of death, with rats and fleas being carriers of deadly diseases. The Black Death spread through Europe, killing 60% of the population. Religious intolerance was rife, with the church being the government in most countries. It was believed that to maintain law and order, everyone had to believe in the same thing. Anyone challenging the church would face persecution by church and government. On the day Columbus sailed for his first journey to the Americas, Spanish ports were filled with ships deporting Jews and Moors from Spain. Through the Spanish Inquisition courts, Jewish and Muslim people could convert to Catholicism or risk having their belongings confiscated, deported, or burnt at the stake, or just hung. Violent crime was rife, and in most cities, there were murders every single night. Floggings were popular, and executions drew huge crowds. On hanging day, workers would leave their jobs early. Ladies and lords will pay for window and balcony seats close to the hanging location. Rebellions were part of Europe as much as class and religion before the 20th century. At the beginning of the 1400s, rebellion and civil unrest became part of Europe's character in the Rhinelands, the Alpine border between France and Austria, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Swiss Confederation. No less than 48 wars and approximately 1,000 revolts took place in Europe between the 1500s and the 1900s, with one lasting 30 and another lasting 100 years. This largest social upheaval, preceded by a series of smaller revolts, resulted in the Peasant War of 1525. When the rebellion moved to southern and western France, it lasted until 1670. The War of Roses between Yorkshire and Lancaster, Schmalkaldic Wars over Lutheran and German monarchy, French wars, Spanish religious wars, Dutch wars, 30-Year War, English Civil War, War of the League of Augsburg, War of Spanish Succession, War of Austrian Succession, the 7 Years' War, the French Revolution, 7 Years' War, Treaty of Paris, Napoleonic Wars. Mercantilism was the belief that a nation, rather than an individual, should be responsible for the country's economies. Merchants believed that a nation could only get rich at the expense of another. Therefore, the nation's wealth could be improved by extracting and importing wealth from foreign lands. 90% of Europeans made their living from the land. Only 20% had enough land to feed themselves. Hunger was a constant companion for the majority of Europeans, with warfare, bad weather, poor transport infrastructure, and famine perpetually present. 1/3 of children died before the age of 5, while half died before the age of 10. Less than half the population reached adulthood. Between the 16th and 17th century, 1/3 of young people died before the age of 15. Slave is a Latin noun. Service. Slavery, forced labor, and indentured labor was not new to Europeans when they started looting and cannibalizing the New World. The most common form of forced labor in Europe was slavery. In Rome, slavery was the foundation of the state, with slaves working entirely on public works, roads, buildings, bridges, and farms. Later, in British colonies like North America and in Africa, large numbers of Scottish, English, and Germans arrived and was used as indentured labor, paying back the cost of their voyages. Serfdom after slavery was the most common form of forced labor. Whereas slavery is property, serfs were bound to the land. The main difference between a serf and a peasant was that peasants were free to leave one landowner and find work with another.